There's something no one really prepares you for as you get older. It's not the wrinkles, the aches, or even the changes in routine. It's the feelings. At this stage of life, emotions don't come in loud waves anymore. They come quietly. A thought that lingers a little longer than it used to. A memory that shows up out of nowhere. A heaviness you can't always explain, and sometimes, a deep calm you never felt when life was busy. If you're over 60, you may notice you feel things now that you never had words for before. Not because something is wrong, but because life has finally slowed down enough for you to hear yourself. And let me say this clearly. This video is not here to fix you. You are not broken. You are not behind. And you don't need to become someone else to be emotionally healthy or spiritually strong. This is about understanding what's happening inside you, gently. About making sense of your emotions instead of pushing them away. About finding peace without pressure, and clarity without changing your entire life. We're not talking about big transformations or overnight miracles. We're talking about small, quiet shifts. The kind that happen day by day. And slowly make life feel lighter, calmer, and more grounded. So if you're here, take a breath. You're in the right place. And for the next few minutes, you don't need to do anything at all. Just listen. As we move into this season of life, something important begins to shift. Not on the outside, but on the inside. After 50, after 60. The things that once demanded all of your attention start to loosen their grip. Careers slow down or end. Children build lives of their own. Social circles grow smaller, not because you failed, but because life naturally simplifies. And in that quiet, emotions have more room to speak. You may notice moments of reflection that didn't exist before. Thinking about people you've lost. Conversations that never happened. Paths you took, and paths you didn't. This isn't regret. It's awareness. With age comes a deeper emotional honesty. You no longer want noise for the sake of noise. You don't want to prove yourself. You don't want to rush past your feelings just to look strong. And here's something that needs to be said out loud. Feeling heavier at times does not mean you're weak. It means you've lived long enough to understand that life carries weight. Emotional depth is not a burden, it's a sign of wisdom. This is also where spirituality quietly enters the picture. Not as rules, not as sermons, and not as something you have to earn. Spirituality at this stage is about grounding. It's about finding steadiness when life feels uncertain. It's about connection, to yourself, to meaning, to something larger than daily worries. You're not looking for answers anymore. You're looking for peace. And that shift, that gentle turning inward, is one of the most natural parts of aging. Nothing about this is something to fight. It's something to understand. There are certain emotional struggles that don't get talked about much. Not because they're rare. But because people your age were taught to carry things quietly. One of them is loneliness. Not always the kind that comes from being alone. But the kind that can exist even in a room full of people. The kind where conversations stay on the surface. And no one really asks how you're doing anymore. Another is the feeling of becoming invisible. You may notice it in small ways. People interrupting you. Looking past you. Or assuming your best years are behind you. It's subtle, but it leaves a mark. Then there's the exhaustion that comes from being strong for a lifetime. Decades of responsibility. Of showing up when you were tired. Of holding families together. Of staying steady so others could lean on you. That kind of strength has a cost. And by this stage of life, emotional fatigue is not failure. It's weariness from having carried so much for so long. And on top of all of that, there's a quiet pressure many seniors feel. The pressure to stay positive. To be grateful. To say, I'm fine, even when the heart feels heavy. Because complaining feels wrong. And sadness feels like something you should have outgrown by now. But emotions don't work that way. They don't follow age rules. And there is nothing wrong with you for feeling deeply, even now. These experiences are more common than you think. And you're not alone in them. Even if it feels that way sometimes. At this stage of life, emotional health doesn't mean waking up happy every morning. It doesn't mean smiling through everything or pretending that difficult feelings don't exist. Real emotional health is quieter than that. It's about honesty. Being able to admit what you're feeling without judging yourself for it. Peace doesn't come from forcing positivity. It comes from allowing your emotions to be real, without letting them take over your life. There may be days when you feel calm. Other days when you feel sad, reflective, or simply tired inside. Emotional health isn't trying to change those feelings. It's learning how to sit with them without fighting or fearing them. When you stop resisting emotions, something interesting happens. They move through you more gently. They don't stay stuck. They don't need to shout to be heard. This is where emotional maturity comes in. Not the kind that means, I don't feel anymore. But the kind that says, I understand what I'm feeling, and I don't need to punish myself for it. For many people, earlier years were about emotional suppression. Pushing feelings down to survive, to provide, to keep going. That was strength then. But now, emotional strength looks different. It looks like permission. Permission to feel without shame. Permission to rest emotionally. Permission to let life be complex without blaming yourself for it. And in that permission, guilt begins to loosen its grip. For many people, the word spirituality can feel heavy. It can bring up memories of rules, expectations, or the feeling that you were never doing enough. But spirituality, especially at this stage of life, isn't about performance. It's not about proving faith, following a script, or living up to anyone else's idea of what you should believe. Real spirituality is about connection. Connection to yourself. To the quiet moments that make you feel steady. To a sense of meaning that doesn't need to be explained or defended. It can be as simple as sitting in silence and letting your thoughts slow down. Noticing a moment of gratitude without forcing it. Accepting the day as it is, instead of judging it for what it isn't. This kind of spirituality doesn't demand effort. It invites presence. And part of that invitation is letting go of all the shoulds you've carried for years. You should be stronger. You should be more grateful. You should have figured it all out by now. Those voices aren't wisdom, they're noise. Meaning at this age isn't found in big answers or dramatic changes. It's found in ordinary days. In small moments of calm. In choosing acceptance over resistance. And when spirituality feels this gentle, it becomes something you can finally rest in. Not something you have to earn. By the time you reach this stage of life, you've learned something important. Big promises and dramatic changes rarely last. You're not interested in reinventing yourself. You don't want complicated routines or someone telling you to start over. And honestly, you don't need to. That's why the idea of day by day matters so much. Emotional and spiritual healing doesn't happen in big leaps. It happens in small, steady moments. The kind that don't demand energy you no longer want to waste. A gentle check-in with yourself. A quiet pause before reacting. A moment of awareness instead of pushing through. These small practices work because they respect where you are now. They don't overwhelm you. They don't ask you to become someone new. They simply meet you where you are. Healing at this age is not about intensity. It's about consistency. Doing a little, often, is far more powerful than doing a lot once and burning out. And when the approach is gentle, your mind and heart stop resisting it. Day by day isn't slow. It's sustainable. And in a season of life where peace matters more than progress. That makes all the difference. At this stage of life, emotional well-being isn't about managing your feelings or keeping them in line. It's about noticing them. So many of us were taught to judge emotions the moment they appear. Sadness means something is wrong. Anger means we failed. Silence means we should snap out of it. But emotional awareness asks for something different. It asks you to pause and simply check in. To notice what's present without labeling it good or bad. Some days, that might be sadness. Other days, a quiet sense of calm. Sometimes gratitude shows up unexpectedly. And sometimes there's just silence, no strong feeling at all. All of that is allowed. When you stop judging emotions, they stop feeling like enemies. They become signals, not problems. And in that awareness, something subtle but powerful happens. You begin to feel more free. Freedom doesn't come from controlling emotions. It comes from letting them exist without fear. From knowing that whatever you feel today does not define you. It's simply part of being human. Spiritual grounding doesn't require special time or a different lifestyle. It lives in the moments you already have. It might be found in stillness. A few quiet minutes where nothing needs to be solved. In the rhythm of your breathing. Not changing it, just noticing it. In nature. Watching the light change, feeling the air, listening without rushing. Sometimes it appears through memories. Not to pull you backward, but to remind you of how much you've lived. And sometimes, grounding is found in silence itself. No words. No explanations. Just presence. These moments don't interrupt your day. They support it. When spirituality is woven into ordinary routines, it stops feeling like effort. Peace becomes something you touch naturally, without trying to create it. And slowly, calmly, this is where a deep sense of steadiness settles in. Right in the middle of everyday life. As the years pass, emotional baggage starts to feel heavier. Not because you're weaker. But because you no longer need to carry what once helped you survive. Old regrets have a way of resurfacing. Things you wish you'd said. Choices you question in quiet moments. Paths that closed before you were ready. There's also old anger. Not loud anger, the quiet kind. The kind that stayed buried because life didn't allow time for it. The kind that was set aside so you could keep going. And then there are expectations. Expectations of how life should have turned out. Of how people should have treated you. Of who you thought you'd be by now. Holding on to these things hurts more now because your heart has changed. It's softer. More honest. Less interested in fighting battles that no longer serve you. Letting go at this stage of life isn't giving up. It's an act of self-respect. It's saying, I don't need to punish myself anymore. It's choosing peace over replaying the past. It's allowing wisdom to replace resentment. Emotional lightness doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from understanding. From honoring what you've been through. And deciding it no longer gets to weigh you down. And that choice, to release rather than carry, is one of the quiet strengths of aging. As you continue to nurture yourself, something begins to change, quietly, almost imperceptibly. Emotional health isn't about being louder or more energetic. It's about feeling calmer, steadier, and more present in your own life. You'll notice boundaries that used to feel difficult now feel natural. You protect your energy without guilt. And yet your heart becomes softer, more compassionate, more understanding. Reactions that once felt automatic, irritation, worry, frustration, begin to fade. In their place comes a quiet peace. Not numbness. Not avoidance. But a steady strength that doesn't need to prove itself. This is what emotional and spiritual health looks like over time. It's aging with dignity. It's growing wiser without losing tenderness. It's carrying life's lessons with grace instead of burden. Take a deep breath and let this sink in. You are not behind in life. You never were. Emotional and spiritual growth is not a race. It unfolds at its own pace. And every day you show up for yourself matters. Take life one day at a time. Notice your feelings, your quiet moments, your small wins. Allow peace to grow slowly, gently. Like sunlight spreading over a calm morning lake. You don't need to hurry. You don't need to force it. Just be present with yourself. And let each day bring a little more clarity, a little more calm, a little more ease. Remember this. Peace is built quietly. One mindful, gentle moment at a time. Be patient with yourself. Allow your emotions to flow. Allow your spirit to rest. And know this. Even the smallest shift toward understanding and calm is a victory worth honoring. Because in the end, it's not about doing more. It's about being, fully, softly, wisely, day by day.